Hi everyone, I've been meaning to do a video on how to correct errors, and so I think I'm finally getting around to it. So in this first installment of that series, I'm going to show you how to untwist stitches or how to work twisted stitches. Now twisted stitches are formed when you either wrap the yarn while knitting, you wrap it incorrectly, or if you've dropped stitches and you pick them up and you don't pick them up in the right orientation. So let's say you've left your work and you come back and this is how your work lies and you're like, oh my god, what happened? Did my cat get a hold of it or my kid get a hold of it? And your stitches are off. So your first goal should be just, get the stitches back on the needle, right? So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to try and get the stitches back on. But you may not always pick up the stitches in the right orientation, right? So in your panic, you're just gonna try and get them on the needle before they drop any further, right? And right now you can see that I've picked up all the stitches. This last stitch is not knit. My last knit stitch is here. So I'm going to put this stitch back on the needle and I'm going to knit it. And now I'm ready for my next row. Now we just picked up all these stitches. We have no idea what orientation we picked those stitches up in. So how do we handle when the stitches are twisted and not in the right orientation? So I'm going to start the next row. This is just a garter stitch sample, so I'm just doing a garter stitch. So I'm going to knit the first stitch. Now when I get to the second stitch, I'm going to look at it to make sure it's in the right orientation or not. In this case, the front loop, the right orientation is where the front loop of the stitch is actually higher than the back loop of the stitch. That is the correct orientation. When I look at the stitch straight on, I should actually not even see the back loop, which you can see I'm not seeing. So this is all in the correct orientation. I can knit it just fine. The next one is the same way. It's in the right orientation. I can knit it just fine. And now I come to a stitch where it is twisted. As you can see, the front loop of the stitch is lower than the back loop. When I look at the stitch head on, I can actually see the back loop of the stitch. To correct that, there's a couple different ways. You can actually take the stitch out and put it on in the right orientation, and then you can see that the front loop is higher than the back loop of the stitch, right? And so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, now I've come to the next stitch and clearly the next stitch is also not in the right orientation. The back loop is above the front loop. The other way to fix it is to actually then knit it through the back loop. Rather than knitting it through this front loop, we're going to knit it through the back loop. And that also corrects the twist. Okay, so a couple different ways to correct the twist. Sometimes it can be very, it can be a little bit difficult to see. So for instance, here, I could look at it and go, oh, is it twisted or not? But if I look at it really closely, I do see that the back loop is higher than the front loop. So I'm going to untwist that and work it. And same thing here. For me, the easier thing to do is just to untwist it and work it. Okay. Like that. And so either ways, either you untwist it and you work it or you knit it through the back loop. That's how you would work or untwist a stitch.